What you're looking at is the oldest of the pieces here in this exhibition. This piece has been to England, to Kansas City, plus this traveling show, plus others. So it's the most kind of exhibited piece that I've ever had, actually. Comes in 3 sections because we always have to take into account. Here's one section. There, this is one end, and this is the other end. We have why would this come in 3 sections? Anybody?
Extra shipping.
Why would this have to be? Why couldn't this come as a single unit? Why does it have to come in 3 separate sections? There's one section. There's the middle. And
To transport it.
You got it. To transport it, to put it in an elevator, to put it through a door. So we have to think about that always. And all of our pieces are like a puzzle that gets put together after we degrade it, and also just to crate it. There's very few forklifts that would actually manage to lift something like this. So all of that has to be taken into account. But that, my guys do brilliantly, so I don't have to worry so much about it, because this still feels like a single unit. That's all I care about, that the end result feels like a single unit. So I made the wooden part first, and I made it for an exhibition at Exit Art, which is a place that existed in New York City for many, many years. That this exhibition had to do with sound. Now, I mean, it's not as though I'm not interested in sound, but I have no clues. You know, there are people who really know about manipulating sounds. I have no clues about this, so I did this in a very primitive way. If you put your voice, if you're standing in the middle of that, and if your voice spoke to the bottom of the bowl, it reverberates and echoes very differently as your voice goes up. And you can almost feel that right from the voice. You can almost feel that there's a greater distance and there's a greater sort of, anyway, there's a different sound as your voice goes up. I then made niches for all of these guys, all of these little sacks. They're almost like little homes, little nests. And it's the side grain here that the little nests get lost a little bit because of the side grain and I not being able to sort of dig in as deeply as I can in the end for me. But that's kind of my point. These are made also out of the foreststomach of the cow. And I have a sack that I made of muslin, this hand-sewn sack that I put soil into, but really I put peat moss, which is very light soil, because the intestines really can't hold anything, because I told you they were very fragile. So I put peat moss in the muslin sack, and then I put like a string around to tie onto another sack. Then I put the intestine around it. And I actually had my grandchildren help me sew the intestine. I kind of feel like it's a great thing to expose them to a lot of stuff. Anyway, after the intestines were sewn, while they were still wet, I put my hand in a little bit of graphite, then I put it on the surface while they were still wet, so that it could really sink into the skin of this intestine. And hence you have this. They're extremely fragile. You know, and very fragile. So we take them off with each exhibition. We have a special way of packing them. Put them back on with each exhibition. We mark them so that they're put on in exactly the same place. And I keep, you know, replacing some that have a harder time than others. So, but I like the kind of dance that they do. You see the little loops when you don't even see the intestine. hence the thinking behind pairing them off. And the dance is on the surface, and it's really one of my most primitive pieces, and I don't even know what that word primitive means, but I feel like it came from some other culture, some other place. So any questions about this piece?
How are they attached?
They're attached with itty, I'm so glad you can't see it. They're attached with itty bitty nails that we paint black to match the black of the intestine.
Oh, my question is, I was looking at this end in terms of the hollowed out area and what was her technique or her process for keeping the top part from collapsing down.
In this case, it was a piece of cake.
It's not always that. A C shape that is glued the way we glue, which is very, very firm, tightly knit seams, will always stand up, no problem. But I did cheat. I had to cheat a little bit. I wanted this open right here. I didn't want to seal this, but I had to give it this support in order for the very thing we're talking about. I couldn't have gone on forever and had the seam hold up. I had to put this support. And I try to make it visual as quiet, visually as quiet as I possibly could. But here's my sin right here. So you see the spoon? Oh, go ahead.
Would you address the relationship between your media and the scale? I mean, you don't like to make little models, it'd be tough to do with toothpicks. But this work, you're using and fighting with big pieces of wood.
Somehow, this tells me where else to go. I can't imagine a toothpick doing that. You know, when I finished cutting this, and as I told you, I started at the beginning here. You know, once I have this, I have a clue as to what this line means. Once I put this on, I have another clue as to what this line means. That could never happen in a model, so it would be completely futile. And then look what happens to the background. Look how sort of uneven and sort of complex. It's not really a background, but I'm just calling it. I can see that it just gives me another important thing here is however, well, I guess maybe you can see from this. Let me see if I can see better from this side. Okay, so let's see if I'm not right. Look what I did. Look what I did with these seams. You see these seams, this seam, this seam, this seam, this seam, this seam. It just shifts ever so slightly. So again, that movement gets reiterated. But that slow, desired movement. It's like the scales of the fish, and it's shifting ever so slightly when they twist or when they turn.
So did you do the graphite cut in there?
No, I glued it. We glued it off seam, so that part of the seam would be, but I also cut it this way, so the part of the seam would stick out. I did it, on the side and at the top. Again, so, it's not like an accordion, but it's kind of, again, implies movement. Why is movement important? I don't even know that. I just know that imbuing the work with a specific energy, an energy that you can embrace.
Ursula, as you're going along, do you ever want to go back and change things that the glue is dry?
Well, that happens. But what I try very hard to do is to do all the changes while we're cutting and screwing, because we can always unscrew. You can't rip it open anymore once it's glued. The glue is really tough. Once in a while, I can cut, like say if I had to cut this chunk off, it could be done, and then I could rebuild something in there. But to cut like one or two chunks is really, really hard. So I already know this, so I keep track of that in my head.
How do you know when it's finished?
Okay, question, how do I know when it's finished? Instinctive again, there's a way in which the piece on all of my work sort of pulls me. Like it still needs this, it wants to, and when you no longer have it pulling that way, and it's often not so clear, but there's an instinctive thing that says, all right, you can let it go. It's almost like when you send your kid off to college, but then it's just a time, and you have to no matter what, And people ask me too, do you miss them when they leave your studio? Whether it's for an exhibition or whether it's a purchase. I love the blues. Gives me more room, space. It's a good feeling to keep them moving.
You must have a super large studio.
I have a super large studio.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you know the lighting, like how you're going to light each piece every time, or do you change it from different locations?
Yeah, we're going crazy with the lighting because of this ceiling that is just really the most awful ceiling I've ever done. Those panels prevent the light from even shining its beams on work. But we're doing the best we can. And we have Albert on, which is fantastic. So he's trying his best to negotiate between those goddamn colors. So this piece, okay, I think where you are, it's good for you to see this piece. Finger spoon, that's going to be better lit. That's the one. I don't often show off about our technical feats, but how many of you have ever used a circular saw? 1, 2, 3. Okay, if you know anything about a circular saw, that these fingers, and I draw on exactly where the flat part should come. I draw on where the indentures are. So every single piece, I draw exactly the profiles on all 4 sides of where it should be cut. But to cut these things, I have a guy that comes from Tucson, Arizona, that comes every other month, who is just a fantastic cutter, and he's a lyrical cutter. I have cutters who are aggressive cutters, and I have cutters that cut, I sound like I have this huge team. I have 2 guys that are with me permanently always, and I have this one that comes every other month. That's it. That's who makes all of this work. And I'm a fanatic about controlling all of the visuals of the work. So anyway, he cut this very beautifully. And the top, again, it curves little to the right, comes out. It's very important, again, for the life, for the energy of this piece. that it scoops away from the wall, scoops away from the wall at the top. And there's a little dot there, not a dot, but fingers, little itty bitty fingers at the very top. Not that that's everything, but. And then
All circular saw?
all circular. Not chainsaw. Chainsaws are monsters. They eat away 1/4 of an inch. They're very crass. You can't get anything this delicate in the chainsaw. Nothing like this. So come over here and we'll take a look at. This piece too, I think looks better on this wall than it did at any other institution, any other museum. In my head, these are kind of plates. Obviously, they're not plates. But I've had it's not just a reputation, it's really true. I've made many, many bowls and many sort of farmers' implements, but they're really not implements, and they don't belong to farmers, and they're not very utilitarian. They're sort of a myth, my myth behind a plate. And I made this one first. And can you maybe tell me why this one was first, or how you can tell by the visuals that this one was first?
You have more control on that one, it seems.
Okay, so she said I had more control on that one.
Well,
And that's true. With this one, there was less certainty. There was I was floundering, and hence, I think you see some of it in the way the edges were done, and maybe in the way the bottom part was done. And in this one, I was more certain. And it really kind of pissed me off that I got so sure of myself, because you're not, to not have the vulnerability of all that groping makes the piece actually not as interesting. So, but I liked this one so much that I had to make another one. So I did, and I don't mean to put this one down, because in some ways this is, this has things that are a little bit more complex that are going on. But with this stuff down here, I actually was going down all the way, going on to spilling onto the floor, and I said, stop, Ursula, stop. So, anyway, any comments about these two? Okay, we'll look at this. You want to ask that question again?
I'm assuming there are different sizes of circular saws?
Yeah, the little ones are of no help whatsoever. The little ones are like a joke. They usually have no power, very small amounts. We have a very special Milwaukee saw, and we go through maybe 20 of them a year, that we have to get either rebuilt or throw away. But they have to have power, and they're all 7.5 inches. The blade is 7.5-inch blade, tungsten steel teeth. And the teeth go, well, you don't want to know, but they're like 3 together, and then there's one that has a jagged edge, and then there's 2, and then there are 3 together again. So it's a very special blade. And we were so afraid that we wouldn't be able to get it again, because we had such a hard time purchasing that very blade. That I bought $4,000 worth of just the blades. This was a year ago. So this is a piece that's made from the 4th stump of a cow, basically an intestine. An intestine that looks like a big old sock. And when you wash it, the water expands it. You know, same thing that happens to your stomach, you know, especially if you drink warm water. You know, your stomach feels good and relaxed, you know, it relaxes the intestine. I'm only saying this because I get them in 5-gallon buckets. I order the intestines, and then I wash the salt off, because the only way that they can keep them preserved is by bathing them in salt. I wash the salt off, because otherwise it crystallizes on your surface, and if you don't want that, you can have it, and the salt keeps eating away at it, which I can't afford, you know, in a piece. This piece is almost 20 years old. You know, it yellowed a little bit more, but I like the yellowing. It has epoxy on the top because it couldn't have survived otherwise. It would have shrunk from more and more. And the epoxy prevents the air from getting in and the funguses from eating it up and the bacteria and all of that. So, but still, if somebody poked a finger through it like this, it would get a hole and it would ruin the piece. So it's still vulnerable. It still has a thin layer. So this is, you know, a piece that I made a paddle for. That's corrugated paddle out of cedar. And I made each of the teeth kind of different. You know, they're like a family of teeth that just keep being a little bit different. Like your teeth are all different from one another. And I love what the skin does over the rib cage. Not that this is what this is, but that these shadows are very important, you know, in sort of playing with the edges of the piece in different ways. So it's a piece that's kind of more delicate maybe, you know, than some of the other pieces that I make, in part because the cedar itself, the cuts that can be kind of harsh, the cuts are covered up with the intestine.
How did you create the seams?
How did I create the seams? I sew the intestine while it's wet. Because once it's dry, it crumbles. You can't pierce it. You can't really work with it while it's wet. And then while it's wet, I wrap it around, and then I keep sewing the next one. And I wanted the intestines in part because, you know, every time I have a semi-truck of cedar coming in, I say, all right, Ursula, enough of the cedar. So I wanted something almost on the level of something that was distasteful or disgusting, but it ended up being so beautiful. I mean, ended up being sort of really rich lace-like. So it's strange where you can find beauty, but that's the thing, is you never want to predict too much stereotypically what beauty is. And I'm still looking for other materials, but I have to say the wood has served me really well. So why don't you go around to the small room and you'll see the paper pulp pieces, and then I'll meet you in the other room. I spent 3 months in Rome. They have an Etruscan museum that is marvelous. And there's something about the Etruscan culture that is like none other. You know, you see tombstones of a man and his wife, and he'll embrace her, and they're lying, you know, with their feet up and their feet, you know, together, like they're really, I mean, you can see smiles, like gentle smiles on their face, and real affection between the two of them. It's almost it's not a usual thing at all, you know, that one sees that kind of monumentalized, you know, that one sees that in in sculpture. So there they had tremendous sort of displays of necklaces. And the necklaces there were threaded with wires that went through, but the wire was very jaggedy. It wasn't like our necklaces that all seemed to lie smoothly, you know, on our bodies. This was, you know, erratic, and it was sort of, you know, wandering in its own ways. It wasn't sort of predictable from small beads to big beads, or so. I think it was not long after I saw that I made this one. And of course, this isn't a necklace, and of course, this isn't a collar. I call this a collar. And sometimes you put titles to things because you don't know what else to call it. I don't want to have Untitled, 207 or something. I don't want that. So this pigment that I have, and you can see a little bit of green. It's a pigment that I bought when I came back from Rome. I had a suitcase full of pigment that had blacks that are earth connected, with greens and with deep browns and with colors that felt less harsh than the blacks that we make here in the United States. Because many of our blacks start with purple. Every black starts with a color. And the purple chemical blacks don't feel the same. So anyway, this is with that. I just mix that pigment with water, and then they spray it where they fix it that comes from seaweed. Any questions about this one?
I have a question about the previous one. I'm sorry.
Sure.
I'm curious as to if there was a reason why you didn't use graphite or any pigment.
Okay, why I didn't use any pigment or any graphite? Just didn't think it needed it. I thought it had a really good profile without it, and I don't even know if I can sort of have a clear reason as to why I didn't. There were other questions that were here that were asked of me. Yes?
Is there, you've mentioned 3 different things, cedar, lace, and cow intestines. Is there any between those 3 points of reference? Is there a connection for you? Is that part of that myth, of how you interpret the objects?
Is that part of a what?
You were talking about myths, the myth about a farmer's blade or something like that. Is there a relation between those, the lace, the wood, and
is there a relation between the lace and the wood? I don't know, except that the lace is made out of wood, and the lace isn't really lace to begin with. You see, it gets complicated. I mean, I could go on and on, but I don't know whether I could really, answer the question of that relationship in a way that would make a simple equation. But obviously, those are things that I'm extremely attracted to. And then when you look at my work, there's something about the work and its connection to fabric, not always, but sometimes, that I'm enamored of, but I have no idea. I mean, I really don't know why. Yeah.
Do you have an idea to make like a tapestry or something like that? Because this looks like a fabric, right?
Yeah.
This looks like wood, like the tapestries, the wall.
Yeah.
Did you think that when you used it?
So the question is do I have any ideas of making tapestries? It's not a bad idea, but I think that there's something about, because I did knit once, and there's something about the even stitches that you have to work with. And I knit a sweater, and I get so restless with it that I actually kept knitting it, and it was this awful color. It was like this off yellow. I kept knitting it almost all night, but I just hated it so much. Anyway, I never finished it. I think I knitted everything but one sleeve or something like that. But there's something about the unit of knit purl, and there's something about the unit that you have to use of the wool or the thread that you use to make a tapestry. something about that stitch unit, you know, that I have a hard time working with. But I've never really woven, you know, so I don't know for sure, because I know you can change that unit, and I know you can make some of the parts of the, you know, whatever thread you use thicker and thinner and so on. Yeah.
Do you have any idea where you developed your love for wood?
Do I have any idea where I developed my love for wood? I don't know if I can answer that clearly either, but obviously I don't know if I really love it.
Well, let's say your association with it.
I mean, you should see the masks I wear to protect myself from it.
But you do it.
Weighs 50 pounds. I do it because I love, it's a stupid word.
You are,
It's
no,
another
maybe
word.
love is
Because
the
I
best.
seem to need to make sculpture.
Yes,
And that I seem to communicate best with the cedar. I seem to say most closely what I need to say with the cedar. And I've used other woods too. They really suck, you know, in the sense that they're either too hard, too tough, too much grain. So the cedar, so you look at that, you don't think of grain, right? Even though it's open, it's not graphited. So it seems to fulfill something that I can't let go of, and I still seem to find things. I have now pieces in my studio that I've just made the last year that are quite, you know, different. I mean, I'm finding things. It doesn't end, you know, in terms of what I can unearth through the cedar. Yes.
On this piece, I'm trying to figure out what came first, the spray painting, because the top of the protruding pieces don't have the paint on them.
Well, the paint comes very, very end,
Mhm.
and I actually paint it with water and pigment. And I paint it with getting more watery as it gets to the bottom. No, I don't want to make like a complete anything in terms of. See, I you know, if my work started to look too designy, I just put a bullet in my head. You know? But on the other hand, I have a terrific respect for really good design. But I don't have a terrific respect for things like, let me see, I don't want to insult anybody. But what the heck?
Go ahead.
There's a piece I made for Microsoft. That's a rather large piece. It's 66 feet. It's the only outdoor piece that they have. It's in Seattle, right near Seattle. It's on their campus. And there's a kind of suburban, young campus mediocrity that all of their architecture is. And they're neat freaks, you know, about their gardens. That is that, and they're not poetic gardens. They're just neat freaks. You know, so they do things to my piece, like make this white, huge pebbled rug all around it. That's 6 feet wide on one side and 6 feet wide on the other side. It kind of swallows the whole thing up. So I guess it's like the suburban neatness, you know, that sort of stuffs things in a package that is so visually boring. All right, that's enough.
Can I ask something?
Yeah.
So in this room you have this outside scale, even though you make reference to collar, maybe necklace, but not really the true description. The vessel, huge plates again. How do you react to the interpretation of this sort of scale and your comment that, or how would you react to the comment of, you know, the scale of the gods, sort of, you know, that these enormous pieces, but in this particular room, you can actually see things that we know to be practical, such as a bowl or a plate or maybe a necklace. How do you react to, oh, it's this outsized scale? Is there something to that, or is there nothing really to that?
Well, I hope there's something to that outside scale.
Yeah. But do you take it to an imagination of, you know, like I almost see something like this, you place it out next to Stonehenge, and you now have somebody really questioning what was going on, you know, and where your imagination maybe is taking you. you see it going that far?
Let's see, I think the main question that you asked is the purpose of my scale, which I don't think I can really answer. But obviously, the urge is tremendous because the price I paid for that scale is tremendous in terms of everything, you know, the labor, the storage, the space I need to work in, everything. And I don't think there's like a simple answer to the scale. Obviously, I think that if I made these plates like this, with the little things coming off, they would be nothing in my head. And I think they would really be nothing. Or if this were made into an itty-bitty thing. Or if this would be made into an itty-bitty thing. Huge, huge things. You know, I made one bowl that was coming apart, falling apart, but in a way that was quite beautiful. It shifted with some of the seams with which it belonged. And, you know, it didn't feel like it was exploded or anything that simple. You know, that it had a way of shifting in a way that was complex, visually complex, I thought. And that if you had that happening with a small abstract thing, you know, who cares? But if you see these weighty things that are shifting, and, you know, sort of, you know, joining and not joining and separating, it's a whole nother feel, it's a whole nother thing. And obviously, I don't do it because it's an easy way out. You know, that my price for doing this scale is really high. You know, in terms of time, energy, emotions. You know, when I commit myself to a large piece, like the one that's on the cover of my book, it took me almost a year. It's like diving into a pool and staying there for a year. You know, that's all we work on, is that one piece. And these commitments are huge. I mean, not that there's nothing I'd rather do, right? I mean, if I miss my studio for a number of days, I get like, I don't feel so good. So,
Which piece took you the longest to create?
here,
Yeah, out of these, which piece took?
I think the two, I think this one, and the reader piece, the halo with the straight up.
And it took about how much time?
9, 10 minutes
Wow, that's a lot.
of total focus. It's good, it's good. Keeps me out of other trouble. It's great.
Thank you. I just have a comment on the unfortunate of young individuals at this point, and maybe in reference to the question about the lace.
Can you all hear?
Oh, there's something in reference to the question about the lace and sort of the usage of wood, the piece that you talked about in Seattle. Correct me if I just thought it was like added dimension to tracing the origin of some of the pieces. I think the piece in Seattle, you were tracing an old folk dance, Polish folk dance, and I see sort of ever since hearing that, I can't let go of it when I experience one of your pieces, sort of embody the steps, tracing the movement of cultures that are part of your heritage, but before your time.
You're so right. Meta's a very, very dear friend of mine. Do all of you know that?
No.
Yes. And those of you students who have her as a teacher,
I consider you very, very lucky, very special.
thank you.
Thanks, Ursula.
I have a question.
Yeah.
You speak of the backbone of things, meaty, fleshy, using words like that. How the skin folds around the bones, the rib cage of an animal, of a person. How would you
It all sounds pretty good.
How would you describe the relationship between your work and the anatomy or physiology of humans or living beings?
That's a good question. I use it all the time. Not that I study anatomy, it doesn't work that way. But that's as much like a head as it is like a plate. That there is a piece I call bow, let's see, bow with bent leg, I think I call it. There's a lot of from anatomy. There's a lot I use from the way animal joints, work, or the way bones work, or the way, not that I copy it in any way, but somehow it gets drunken in and it comes through the sieve of my brain in a whole other form, but I think it is informed with those things. Any other questions? Yeah.
Are the pieces on the floor, or is there a special platform, or how do you work?
When I work?
When you work.
I think I spend about a third of my life on scaffolding. And my guys built the scaffolding that's built out of cedar. We use that cedar again for making sculpture. In fact, I'm having a birthday party coming up in which we're going to be making, it will be like 130 people, which we're going to be making long tables and benches out of cedar. And then I'm going to be using that cedar again for making my sculpture. But you had another question. I got it.
I'm sorry?
Yeah.
The other question was the cutters. Are they artists or are they just carpenters?
They're not just carpenters. They're really special eyes, especially the cutters. It takes a real courage to do the kind of cutting that we do for my work. And there's a tremendous devotion on the part of them to me and me to them. I not only pay their salaries, but I also give them their medical coverage. We watch out for one another in almost every way. If someone gets sick, or we're like a family. We sometimes go to places to install where we stay for 3 months at a time. We live with one another, we eat with one another. I have somebody, a volunteer, that comes in, she graduated from a culinary, the French Culinary Institute, who cooks for me lunches for my guys, and we eat together every day. I see them much more than I see my husband. That it's a relationship that needs to be one where the egos all get tucked in, where the work is the most important thing, the artwork is the most important thing. We clearly understand it. And the installers that we had with Albert, and obviously really including Albert, also understood that because they're professional installers. A reason why it was such a pleasure to be installing with them. That they know that the artwork takes priority. It's safety. They had a lot of weights they had to negotiate. Never mind the challenges, with the lighting, but that's nothing, that's another story. But it's, one of my guys have been with me for 16 years, and another one's been with me for, I think, 8 or 9. It's a relationship where there's a lot of real care that we take of one another. And it's not mushy, it's not like personal. But it's very professional and very productive.
How did you find them?
That's
just yeah, they're wonderful. How did you find
One of them came to me because I used to teach at Yale for a long time, maybe 10 years. And then I used to get from Yale a lot of guys that also knew tools and that knew the pragmatics of working. And one of them now is, I had as a studio head for about 6 years, who is the brother of the one who's with me now, who's terrific, Sean. And then the other one, I worked with him on a project in Sebastopol, California. Fantastic. And I hired him from that project because I needed somebody. I have to know what they look like before I hire them. Nothing counts, the buyer doesn't count. What counts is how they feel. Yes.
Have you ever collaborated with artists outside your medium?
I collaborated once with somebody named Jimmy Pfaff. She's a friend that I have tremendous respect for her work, and I like her enormously. The only time I've ever called her.
Was she a painter or?
She's a painter, but she does drawings, she also does sculpture, she does three-dimensional things. But she's a real pro at printmaking and at drawing and at painting, more so than the sculpture.
What work did you produce with her?
It's a piece it was just put on my website, and it was on Canal Street. They had a place called the Laboratory that I started, a little itty bitty place. It ended up getting some publicity, and somebody excavated it now, so that the Art 21 people that did the public television program on my work have added that to the Art 21 section. And it's just so, this happened in 1983, something like that. But it just looks so ancient and so cute, and so like an old film, black and white. But it's kind of nice. So we made that piece. So you can see it there. But she's somebody who pirouettes in the air. You know, her work is like exhaling with your breath, where, you know, all these things appear that are very, very thin lined and energetic. And I had this huge slab of cedar that first thing she did, we shared studio, she was below me and I was above, is she drilled holes in my piece, like 6 holes, and she put it on feet, you know, on these thick pipes. And it was kind of a beautiful piece, you know, so she danced above this big, thick slab of what I consider like the earth, you know, at a very irregular edge. It was a lot of fun. But I feel like I have to really know the person and really like their work.
Ursula, thank you so much.
Oh, that's